Hey guys, welcome back. We're working on the 89 F150 again today. We're not doing anything fuel related. Father-in-law was working on it and I guess it slipped off the jack stand or something like that and it bent something in the front end. I haven't looked at it yet. I think maybe it was the crossover there. So that's bent up in a pretty good arc. But anything that has play in it, we're gonna replace. So I'm gonna check the front end, and then we're gonna be pulling it apart and replacing whatever needs replaced, whether that be ball joints or tie rods or whatever. Okay, so we have adjusting sleeves, we have outer tie rods, we have inner tie rods, outer tie rods, and ball joints. Not going to do ball joints. I always like to do adjusting sleeves when I do tie rods because a lot of times they're all frozen together or stuff or whatever. It's just easier to do new adjusting sleeves. You don't have to. You can reuse the old ones sometimes, but it is easier to do new ones. These are place specific. One has threads going different directions than the other one. I don't have the parts list of where he ordered or what he ordered, so I'm going to have to figure it out a little bit as I go. But I do know that these are the outer tie rods and these are the inner tie rods just because of the shape. So I'll still have to pay a little attention when I'm taking it apart. I'll try and take it apart as just like basically one big assembly, and then I'll assemble all of this out here and then put it in and then adjust it, and then it'll be good to go. Alright, so it is out here on the bench. As you can see, this piece has got a nice big arc to it, and the replacement is straight, so definitely was no good. I'm sure you guys saw me just not even take the cotter pins out, and I just beat a socket over the two outer tie rods on the knuckle here, and that is because I hate dealing with rusty cotter pins. So it works just as good to just pound a socket over it, as long as you have the right size socket, and then spin it off and it'll break that cotter pin free. The only problem is if you have to go back together with it, then you either have to get that piece of cotter pin out of the bolt if it doesn't ruin the threads as it comes off, or you have to Loctite it. Either way, not ideal if you have to go back together with it. I'm not going back together with these pieces, so I wasn't too worried about it. But I mean, this is what happens. You can see, just broke it off nice and flush. It didn't ruin the threads or anything, it looks like. I'm not sure about the nut side. This side, actually, it came out. And then I pulled the cotter pin out of this one because I wasn't going to be able to reach up in there and get a socket on it. And then also, you saw me just beat the crap out of the knuckle to break these free. And the reason for that is I really don't like using pickle forks, because when you use a pickle fork, it does this and screws up the boot and all kinds of stuff, and it's more of a pain in the butt. Why not just beat on it? But with the pitman arm, I did use a pickle fork because I was trying to be a little more gentle. You do have to, I mean, you're gonna have to beat on it if you don't have all the special fancy pullers and stuff, which I'm sure I do somewhere, but why get it out if I don't want to? So I used a pickle fork and some heat and stuff just to be a little more gentle, because your pitman arm, every pound you put out here is exponential up to here, so you don't want to, like, you'll mess up your steering box if you start just wailing on this guy this way or even this way. It's going to mess with the gears and stuff, so you don't want to wail on it all that much. And when you're heating this up, be careful, because there's grease in there. When you get it nice and hot, that liquid grease is going to come out and it'll fall on you and burn you. I've learned the hard way. So but yeah, 3 bolts, and this whole assembly comes out of there. So now we just have to assemble all of the new stuff and get it on in there. Okay, we have our pieces just semi-assembled. They're just fitted together so that I can show you pretty much, because I am going to anti-seize inside of these collars because I live up here in the Rust Belt, and that is like one of the most common things is these collars get rusted on here. That's why I like to replace them, and if I ever have to adjust it in the future or anything like that, I want it to be free moving. So these collars, this one is larger than this one. Okay, and then also some of this stuff has reverse thread and some of it's not. So if your collar won't go on and you can't figure it out, it's probably because you just have it backwards. So it should thread on nice and easy. And then when you look in here, you should see the threads. I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but they should match up. They shouldn't be off by like a whole thread or anything. If they look cross-threaded, you can tell just by looking at these notches here, and you want them to look nice. Just leave these loose for now, even when you assemble it, because again, you're going to adjust it all, do everything like that. I'm not going to put this on here until it's in the truck, because why make my life harder? So this guy right here, all it does is keep this thing from spinning, is really its only purpose. You don't have to have it on there. I'm going to leave it on there, but that's all it is, just to keep the collar from spinning. So yeah. Alright, when you're threading these in, I forgot to tell you, make sure that you get them, pretty close to the same threaded distance, because what you're going to do to adjust your toe is adjust this guy. You're not going to pull your tie rod out and spin it or anything like that. You just spin this guy, and it brings them further apart or closer together. So if you have one that's barely threaded in and one that's threaded way in, it's going to disconnect from this one, and then your SOL. So make sure that you have them both threaded in pretty close. They don't have to be exact, but I like to go pretty far in and then adjust them out after the fact. Same with this guy. Just thread them in pretty close to equal distance, and you should be good. Okay, now once you have all those on, what you're going to do is tighten your collars. Let me see if I can angle you so that you can see. Tighten your collars over here and over here, or loosen or whatever, until you kind of are generally straight. So you come in here, straighten out your steering wheel, which mine's a little crooked, and you're just kind of getting it in the general right spot. As you can see, I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but this one is pointed way outwards. I already adjusted this side a little bit to get it generally straight, so if anything, it's pointed inward, toed in a little bit, which I'm okay with. Again, we're just getting it close, we're not getting it perfect. If you can't turn it by hand, you can use a little pipe wrench, just something like this. It shouldn't be too hard, especially with everything being brand new. If it's hard, then you probably have something wrong. So we're just gonna lay under here, and like I said, you should be able to turn it by hand. If you can't, then grab a wrench. But as you can see, this one I can turn by hand. You can see the hub's moving, and I'm just gonna lay with my head behind it so that I can kind of see once it's straightish. Make sure that you've got a gap in here. You're not fighting You know, your tie rods come together. I think right about there is fairly straight. Let me check the steering wheel, see what the steering wheel looks like. Yep, my steering wheel stayed straight. Now, I'm still not going to put these on because we're going to put the tires on after I clean the hub surfaces so that we have a nice clean mating surface. We're going to put the tires on, and then when you drop it, your toe actually changes. So you want to check it with the weight of the truck on the suspension, or else it's going to be wrong. If I were to get it perfect just like this, as soon as I set it down, it's going to be wrong again. So I'm still just not even going to bother putting those on because I'm going to have to adjust it. So. It's also a good idea while you're here to check your brakes on this side. You guys can't see it, but on this side it's fine. On the other side it's actually metal to metal, so that's going to get dealt with. Okay, we got the dough pretty close. I can't really show you because I don't have a second set of hands, but I have it within probably 1/8 of an inch, and it's actually towed out, I think, instead of in, which I would prefer a little bit of toe in, because as it goes down the road, your tires can naturally want to come out just a little bit. So like a 0.01 degree in, or just a hair. You don't want like a lot of toe in, but you don't want it towed out either. So just get as close as you can. A second pair of hands helps a lot. The best way I've found to do it with a tape measure is to take something long and straight as you can. The straighter it is, the better it's going to be. And you set it against here like this. Have somebody hold one on the other side. You are going to have a little bit of tolerance issues because tires flex. So this isn't perfectly aligned with the hub, but it'll get you pretty close. So you hold this on one side, have somebody hold it on the other. You measure to an edge, and then do your adjustments. Move the truck back and forth, or jack it up and let it down again, or whatever each time you make a measurement. Because as you bring it in or out, it's going to bind up and stuff like that. So you want to make sure of that. And then once you're done with that, you can tighten your collars. Your adjustment's going to change as well once you tighten your collars, because as you tighten them, it grabs the threads harder, pulls them together, or pushes them apart depending on where the bind is. And yeah, so all you can really do is get it close if you don't have all the right fancy equipment. So I gotta clean up some grease on that side. So that's that. Not very difficult. I just used some basic tools. You don't need anything fancy. The pickle fork is helpful, but you can do it without it. Torch is helpful. You can do it without it. So there you go. Thanks for watching.